Hi, and welcome back to the MilVet Podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Aaronson, and today I'm joined by my new co-host, Beau Higgins. Beau, many of you guys know Beau. He was a former Marine. He was also previously the head of Amazon's military affairs program. We're excited to have Beau as a teammate here at TMV and as a co-host of the pod. Beau, you are not wearing your signature colorful jackets today. What's up with that?
I'm saving them for the Marine Corps birthday on coming up later this week. So it's a little warm in Florida. It's still in the 80s down here. So I do prefer the jacket, but you can't wear it every day. My wife doesn't even love it every day, sadly. But great to be back here on this side of the desk instead of being the interviewer, being the interviewee, I guess, or reverse of that, interviewer,
Totally.
vice interviewee. And anytime there's a few Marines gathered, I'm happy to be a part of it. So great to be here. Thanks, Brendan.
For sure. And perhaps listeners today will excuse any kind of munching noises. We've got a bunch of crayons for myself and Beau and General Ruark. Our guest today, we are interviewing General Robert Ruark. General Ruark is a retired three-star general from the United States Marine Corps. He serves today as the president and CEO of the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, which is one of the most impactful nonprofits in our community. We're really excited to dig in, learn more about the nonprofit, and hear a bit about General Ruark's experience in our beloved Corps for almost 40 years. Before we dive in, would love to invite you to like, subscribe, share the podcast with a friend. General, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Hey, what a pleasure to be here, Brendan. And it's great to see Beau again, too. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. You get two for the price of one here. Um, General, so I've given a 30,000 foot overview of your background. I gave the people 2 sentences to try and encompass 4 decades of service. It's always really great to hear about someone's background and experience in their own words. So can you take a few minutes to tell us about yourself and your career?
Sure. I may have mentioned earlier that nobody likes to hear a general talk about themselves. I will try to keep this very succinct. ROTC at Miami University of Ohio. And I started out in infantry battalion and ended up on the joint staff and at the Office of Secretary of Defense. It was a 36-year career, and but I had the one thing I thought I would mention is I missed everything. I mean, I missed Beirut. I was on the other side of the world, when Beirut and Grenada happened, and and then I kept missing all these Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and the one thing I really remembered I wanted to do was deploy because I'd been on 6 Marine Expeditionary Unit deployments for 6 months each, but we only did small contingencies, and I kept missing the big ones: the Desert Shield, Desert Storm, OIF, Afghanistan. Finally, I hit the jackpot. I had to get promoted to general, 1 star, to hit the jackpot. And I went from Okinawa, which we were just sending our troops there, but I couldn't go as the regimental commander. But when I finally got to Camp Pendleton and commanded the 1st Marine Logistics Group, I got to deploy 4,000 to a place called Camp Takatam in Anbar Province and supported one MEF. My boss was none other than General John Kelly. And I also was working for General Mattis at the same time. So I finally hit the jackpot, got to work for the 2 folks that I really wanted to work for. Um, Great experience there. From there, I went to the U.S. Central Command and became the J4, the Director of Logistics for the Central Command. I was the first Marine Corps officer to ever do that. It's always been an Army post. And General Mattis was the commander of U.S. Central Command and later General Austin. From there, went to the Joint Staff, which is in the Pentagon. You work for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I was his logistician, General Marty Dempsey, who was just a fabulous leader. And after that, I went to the Office of the Secretary of Defense to work personnel and readiness, which is not what every Marine wants to do, but I probably learned more there than I did anywhere else.
Hmm.
And after 36 years, I got to decide I think it's time to go. Unfortunately, I'm age 57. Am I even employable? So I had the same issue that probably others have as well.
Very cool. I want to spend the preponderance of our time today talking about Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. But before I do, I mean, you gave us like a little bit of Marine catnip here, so we got to ask about it. What was it like working with General Mattis and General Kelly? You don't have to tell us any embarrassing stories because I don't want to endanger your life, but would love to hear just like what was that experience like? I mean, they're obviously 2 legends of the Marine Corps.
Working for General Kelly, it was like you knew his intent right away. He would tell you what was in the right lane, and what you didn't want to do was get in the left lane or the wrong lane. You knew right away. So I'll just give you one story. I'd been there 2 months with 4,000 people, and I was commanding an 8,000 person base. I had joint service. I had all the services there, And then the first bad night was I lost 4 in an IED explosion. And I'm thinking, okay, what happens now? You know, I'm the boss, and these are 4 of my best troops. They were in a convoy, and you know, it was, I think it happened near Fallujah. And the way General Kelly responded, he already had written personal letters by the next morning to the families of, you know, to the wives, families. One of them was a very tragic case where we had a Marine, a Sergeant Martinez, married to a um, a lieutenant, I believe it. No, another Sergeant Martinez. They were married. We had to fly her back, and it was a very tragic situation where they both were serving together in the same organization. Um, but I got to tell you, General Kelly sent his personal plane to pick up Sergeant Martinez, the female, Melissa, and fly her out of Takana all the way back to Kuwait, where she got back to Kunis. And, you know, he, like I said, he had already written the letters, you know, and I think I spent most of the night, you know, in the place where we personnel recovery and PRP platoon where they have the remains, and just for me to try to realize what happened. That's how I dealt with it. But he, in everything he did, he set an incredible example, and I always knew his intent. And you know, when something bad happened, even worse than losing your Marines and maybe a political situation, I had a situation near the end of the tour where the Iraqi general that on the base that I had to take care of as far as security, Camp Habaniya, where he was very upset with something one of my Marines had done, who had basically not let him on the base because he didn't, you know, they tried to run the gate. And this corporal just said, you're not, you know, you're not running the gate. And it was a pretty bad situation. And the general, who was a 2-star Iraqi, I was a 1-star, um, he basically said, I'm going to throw the Marines out of Anbar province. And that's when General Kelly called me. The only time he called me the entire year-long deployment, and he said, hey, Bob, what happened? And I said, okay, here's what happened. The corporal, you know, here's what he did. And we had a tape of it too. I sent him the tape. And he calls me back and says, Bob, he's just doing what a corporal does.
Good.
And that's all I needed to know. That's his intent. So it basically told me that, okay, you better solve this situation or you're probably going to be gone. You need to quiet this down. Don't do anything to the corporal because he did his duty. And to me, it just showed the kind of person he was. I was able to solve the situation with the 2-star general. Fortunately, that's another story for another day. But the bottom line is we didn't do anything to the corporal. We were going to fly him out of theater so he wouldn't get, you know, turned over to the Iraqis or anything like that, which never would have happened anyway. But anyway, he gave me his intent just like when he was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, he would have. It was perfect intent. And General Kelly wasn't enlisted. So for me, he was just, I always knew what he expected. You knew if you ever got in the wrong lane, you were going to, you were not a good place. But sure. That was General Kelly. Mattis, of course, I have General Mattis stories too, but very similar. You always knew his intent. And he always somehow knew. When I was in Central Command as the J4, I had been there probably about 3 months, and I knew we needed to make changes. I just hadn't done it yet. And so one day he pops up. He's a 4-star Central Commander, you know, and he pops up on my, you know, my video monitor, and he wants to talk. And the only thing he told me was, Bob, put your stamp on the organization. And I don't know how he knew I was considering to reorganize the J4 so it'd be more efficient and effective. But all he had to do was say, you know, put your stamp on the organization. And so that gave me all the cover I needed, and I did. And but that's what it was like working for those two. You didn't have to talk to them a lot. You just always knew what they expected. You got to take care of your Marines, you know, and do the right thing. And if you didn't, that's, you know, I never got to that point, but you didn't want to ever be in that spot where, you know, you got on their dark side. You always knew what their commander's intent was, and the expectations were the highest, really. So,
I mean, I have a few quick reactions. First, it is good to hear that even as a general officer, you still get told to figure it the fuck out. So, that is like, it's just funny to hear that even as, you know, as a general, you're getting told, message to Garcia, man. Well, smooth this over. I don't want to deal with this. This is like, you know,
like
figure it out.
Lieutenant all over again. You know? You're never senior enough that you can't take orders. And when it comes to people like Mattis and Kelly, you know, it's just for me, it's always a learning experience.
It was funny, you know, when I went over in 2004, I was the intel guy for that same crew. Mattis was the CG, Kelly was his deputy, Dunford was the chief of staff, Eric Smith was in the op shop. Like, I mean, it's like the all-star team of like, he's coming out. It's just amazing to have. And once you have that, it's hard to go anywhere else because you've kind of seen that. It's like, man, these guys get it. They let you do your job. They have your back. It's amazing to have that runway to do the right thing for those guys. So they'd always the commanders attempt. But I will say, as an intel guy, General Mattis, to your point, sir, he always had a lot of sources out there. He knew, like, he would ask a question he knew the answer to just to see what you would answer because he had like little birds everywhere that were kind of chirping. It was like you had to be very careful with General Mattis because he usually didn't ask a question that he didn't already know the answer to, which I always thought was very interesting.
That's intense.
And they looked out for you too. They took care of your next job and those kind of things. And that's the reason I went to the Joint Staff from there was General Mattis, undoubtedly. So,
I mean, the intel and logistics guys, you guys are always like prime targets for a commander in a commander's update brief to just be like, are you know what's going, like what's the deal here, and it's like almost impossible to be 100% right in your guys' jobs. So I imagine it's a tough spot to be in. And then just for reference, so the story that you told us about losing a couple of Marines, first I want to just say I'm sorry for your loss. That's of course devastating. Beau and I had a conversation yesterday about Travis Manion, who was also killed in Iraq, and it's just a tremendous loss for our country and for our Corps, and for the unit, of course. What year was that? Was that, I think you were there in Iraq in 2008, 2009. I think I looked up before.
2008 April. It was Sergeant. My memory's coming back real quick. Sergeant Glenn Martinez. He was a superstar. He was a college graduate. He was leading a convoy. He was also a state wrestling champion and wrestled in college, and he was all American. He could have been an officer with ease. In fact, his wife Melissa, also sergeant at the same time, she later got commissioned, and I later served with her a little bit more in First MLG when we returned to Camp Pendleton. But these are the kind of the quality of leaders that we had out there. They were going into harm's way and doing the difficult tasks. And back then, the biggest threat was IEDs. They were all over the place, and when you had to recover vehicles, which is what they were doing, they could easily activate IEDs. The bad guys could, and it's just tragic that happened. So,
for sure. I do want to transition the conversation. Maybe we'll dive back in on your Marine Corps experience and ask you for some more stories later in the pod. But I want to spend, again, the preponderance of our time talking about this amazing nonprofit that you are at the helm of. So to kick things off, I was hoping that you'd share with us, what is the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society? What do you guys do? And maybe you can explain it to me as if I'm 5 years old or as if I'm a Marine second lieutenant, and just give it to us, as simply as possible. What does your organization do?
We provide financial assistance and relief to sailors, Marines, their family members, and retirees. And we do it very well. We do about $50 million of financial assistance and relief. We also do financial education. And then we have about 4 other programs here where we can help out families. But the bottom line is we're really focused on that junior Marine or sailor and their family, because the challenges that we saw when we were in uniform are the same as they were today. You've got this incredible housing issues. You've got food. Where do we have enough money for food? Inflation, clothing. Just think about clothing and the prices. Plus, when you're PCSing and you're moving from duty station to duty station, you often can't bring everything. And so, you've got all kinds of other issues that come up, such as death of a family member. And a lot of times they're just, these are things that unexpectedly may happen at the worst times, perhaps when you're changing duty stations or going on deployment, things like that. And people just don't have the money to basically pay for a family member's funeral or burial or the travel expenses or things like that. But speaking of tragic events, we also do a lot of disaster relief. We just had Hurricane Helene, where we provided $750,000 of support to Navy sailors that were stationed at the Navy Information Operations Command in Augusta, Georgia. And of course, we're still adding up the tally for the support that we could provide in Jacksonville and Mayport, Florida, at our huge Navy bases there. But last year in Guam, when they had Typhoon Mawar that hit 165 knot winds that devastated that island and their infrastructure, we provided $1.4 million in grants to 3,100 sailors and Marines and their families. So we're there in good and bad times. And we also have a number of other capabilities I'm happy to talk about. Really there to take care of the junior Marines and sailors and their families.
My question would be, and again, I've certainly, I mean, having been in the Marine Corps 25 years, I'm aware of Navy Marine Corps relief. I don't know that my Marines and sailors probably use it enough. Maybe, I mean, how do the Marines and sailors find you? I mean, I know you have offices, a big office in Quantico, but like, what is the way that typically the Marines and sailors find Navy Marine Corps Relief Society?
Well, of course, going through boot camp is a very an experience where you probably don't remember a lot, whether it's Navy recruit training in Great Lakes or Paris Island or San Diego for the Marine Corps. They get briefed on it, but I don't think many of us can actually inculcate that into our brain that there's actually societies on base that can help you. We are the only military aid society out of the four. The Army's got one, Air Force got one, Coast Guard got one. We are the only ones that are at 52 locations, all the major naval bases, with employees and a lot of volunteers around the world. What normally happens is what happened to me when I was a colonel, and I'll be honest with you, I knew I had heard of Navy relief, which is what we called it back then, but I didn't really know what they did. All I remember is I got to Okinawa when I was a colonel, and we had an issue with one of our young Marines, Lance Corporal, who's had the death of a family member and some serious illnesses as well back home, and he had to go back, and he had no money, he was in debt. I mean, it was just, and his wife, I think, on island was also ill. But all I remember is the sergeant major coming in. You know the way sergeant majors coming in. This guy is like 300 PFT bodybuilder, Sergeant Major Holmes. He was fabulous. He came in and told me all these bad things, and I said, and of course he got the response that he wanted. Said, "What do we do, Sergeant Major?" I said, "Don't worry about it, sir. I sent him to Navy relief," and I never heard about the problem again. So that's when I started thinking, okay, what do these guys do? Because this is phenomenal. This was a huge, a serious incident report in the making, and this, you could see all kinds of bad things happening, but I never heard about it again. Everything went well. He came back, served out his tour, his enlistment, and everything was successful. So that's kind of how I learned about it. But it is I'll be honest with you, it can be a well-kept secret until you need us. And so one of the things that you remember a few years ago, we had these payday lenders off base.
Oh yeah,
Brick and mortar shacks right outside Oceanside by Camp
yes sir.
Pendleton, outside Norfolk with the Navy, outside Camp Lejeune, and they're everywhere. And they were charging, over 100% interest on a lot
It's
of
crazy.
things. Well, we all did a good job. We put them out of business. The problem is they have gone online now, and they can legitimately charge 35.95% interest on loans. So several of our sailors and Marines are getting hoodwinked into these when they go out and they get a transmission fixed and they have no way to pay for it, and car repairs, you name it, things they need for the home. And when they finally talk to one of their chief petty officers or first sergeants, and they say, "What do we do?" They'll send them to Navy relief. So it's really the senior staff non-commissioned officers that actually point them in the direction from everything I can tell. Some of the officers know a lot about us. You probably the ones that are most seasoned or were prior enlisted, but that's how they get to know us. They get sent over to us, and the thing is, we have an office on base. Basically, we're supported by the Navy and the Marine Corps. We are their official charity. They have no other official charities. There's thousands of them out there, all these different things that, but we are their official charity. That means my chairman of the board, who I report to, is right now Lisa Franchetti, the chief of naval operations, 4-star admiral, and it rotates every 2 years. That's who my next one is. It's Eric Smith, the commandant. The last thing I want to do is tell them that one of their sailors or Marines is not getting supported. So last year we did $50 million worth of financial assistance and grants to 38,000 sailors and Marines. If you think about it, that's about 150 at every workday we do around the world. We also have a lot of other programs. But the big one, of course, is financial assistance. We were actually founded in 1904 to take care of widows and orphans. And it came from the proceeds of an Army-Navy football game. $9,000 is what we got. And that's what we started. In fact, Navy lost that game, by the way. But anyway, that's kind of what started the whole thing. And back then, we didn't have servicemen groups life insurance. We didn't have dependents and indemnity compensation. we didn't have survivor benefit plan either for retirees. So that's kind of how we began. And we've kind of morphed over the years to do more than just financial assistance for widows and orphans. And so we have other education programs and things like that. But the big one is always going to be financial assistance.
And so the financial assistance that you guys are providing, from my understanding, it is a mix. You mentioned that there are grants and then there are like these loans that come at a 0% interest rate. And so the purpose of it is like, hey, we've got your back when times are tough. But of course, in order to sustain this and be able to, put those loans forward again to folks that are in trouble in the future, that money is then being repaid back to the organizations that it can then be loaned out again. Is that an accurate read on what you guys do?
Absolutely. So if you donate to the organization, you can just about bet it's going right out the door. Years ago, we established this reserve fund, which is kind of a backup account. It's kind of like, I guess, if you were in another nonprofit that had an endowment, it's kind of like an endowment, but we can draw from the reserve fund anytime we want. So bottom line is, if you're giving to us through the active duty fund drive or retiree fund drive, we can just about assure you that money is going right out the door into some troops or sailors' hands to help take care of them. It could be going for a scholarship as well, but it's, that's kind of the way it works. We're very fortunate with time and experience to be able to do that. We build up this reserve fund as our backup.
Yeah, and so I mean, for the dollars that donors are giving, just again, I just want to reiterate this point because it's really important to how you guys function, and it's important to the service members, and it's also important to donors to understand that for their dollars as they're flowing into Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, they're actually being amplified. So it's not just going to be used, if I'm donating $1, it's not that is going to be used to help one service member and through a situation that could be used to help dozens and dozens of service members over the coming years through what could be some of the most challenging times of their life.
That's right. One of the big things we do is financial education. So I'd say we have many more loans than grants, and part of that is because we sit down and we'll do a budget. If they come in, they can do up to 5 what we call quick assist loans, where they come in, don't have to give a reason, just say, I need up to $1,000 interest free because I have an issue. It could be any number of issues. They'll of course tell us if we ask them, but that's not a requirement. That's how we put the payday lenders out of business.
Yeah.
We do grants basically from when I talk to the caseworkers that do the grants, it's basically, they'll say, we just had to do a grant. There is no way they could have paid this back. It's like if they took over a $9,000 hospital bill for their bride, and there's no way an E3 can pay that back. We had that happen in Jacksonville, Florida, then we paid it. But it's probably about a 90%, 10% ratio of loans to grants. And that's really because we want to teach financial education. And those loans come back over a 12-month period, and then we often recycle them. It just kind of, it perpetuates itself. So it's an organization that has built up enough equity to keep doing that, and can charge 0% interest on loans and get through periods of COVID and other challenges like that. So
I remember, obviously, I was like the Naval Marine Corps Relief Society drive guy as a lieutenant, I think, and I had all the forms and you had everybody say at least they were contacted. Is that still the way you're doing things? Is it more online? Like how that was the only way I ever saw the funding come through. Like how do you get the funding? Is it still the old school way, or is there a new school way that's happened in the last 10 years?
Well, Bo, that's a great question, because when I was looking at this as a potential job when they were having applicants come in, I wanted to take a look at what exactly what exactly it is that that makes this organization tick. But it's an organization that's in fact, I have my chief development officer here, Jillian Gonzalez. Do you want to talk about that one? She's probably a little bit better qualified.
Awesome.
Jillian, welcome aboard, Jillian. You've been put in the hot seat. Please make sure you come close to the mic so we can hear you.
So in 2019, oh, there you go, back on camera. 2019, General Neller was the chair of our board at the time, and he said, you got to start looking at other streams of revenue. You got to take the pack off the Sailor and Marines back for the fund drive. Numbers have been tracking down, similar to CFC. We've been doing better than CFC, but numbers were going down. So in 2019, the society hired their first professional fundraiser. We've spent the last 5 years under General Klimp initially, and now under General Ruark, building out the development stream. So active duty fund drive is about 30-35% of the money we bring in each year. So still very much by our own, for our own, but we have expanded into corporate and foundation grants, as well as really expanding major gifts and other forms of individual giving.
Jillian,
Jillian's
do you have?
actually being very modest here because she was actually that first fundraiser that came in. And yes, you're absolutely right. The active duty fund drive was the quote source of revenue. But we now that's gone down a lot. And the reason it's gone down a lot is just proliferation of military focused nonprofits. I came from one before I came here, the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation, and we're all after, in a lot of cases, the same donors. With the people that have the money will always have the money, and we'll all chase them and things like that. But the good thing is here, one of the things we've been focusing on here is more streams of revenue. So you have a lot of different things, the retiree fund drive. You have organizations that support the Marine Corps, such as exchanges, things like that. You have potentially the commissaries and as well, but also you have digital marketing, digital advertising, those kind of things. We also put on a ball every year where we get proceeds from that too. And then we have something that we seem to be extremely good at, and I'm still trying to figure out why. But the organization I came from, the Scholarship Foundation, we had bequests, planned gifts that came in, but they weren't nearly the proportion they are here. In fact, I don't know if any nonprofit has the size of the bequests that come in, but for some reason, people remember what we did for them or a family member or a friend, and they put us in their will, but they don't tell us. And so, and that's why Jillian has established a planned giving capability. So we can actually have charitable gift annuities and some of the other forms and pledges that we can have for when folks pass away, they can send us a gift or things like that. But it is really amazing how well we do. This year we had a $5.7 million bequest come in, the largest in history, and those really help. But we didn't find out about it until about a year ago, and sometimes it takes a while to come in. But so as far as streams of revenue, one of my focuses here is trying to expand those streams and have as many sources to come in as we can.
That's fascinating about the bequest gifts. I mean, storytelling is everything. I think that it'd be great to be able to hear some of the, hey, when I was in E3 back in 19 whatever, 57, 62, or even I don't know if you're doing that. I hope you are, because I think that would connect and resonate with people. It resonate with me, certainly, of when I needed it, you were there. I did great, and then 40 years later, I didn't forget. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're right, Beau, because people really give because of the stories they hear that create emotion. When they find out that how you supported somebody, how you paid off this incredible medical bill for $9,000 for their son-in-law or things like that, then they say, oh, that must be a good organization. And then you can have, as long as you have have good charity navigator ratings and all the charity evaluators support you real well, and your Form 990, which is your financial statement, makes total sense as far as revenue and expenses, you're probably in a good stead. But you really need to market your stories, and that's one of the things we're doing right now is we're going to bring in a marketing capability, because it's only in the best charities. A lot of times you have to outsource it because it's complex. Try to figure out digital advertising and marketing today. It is amazing, and you probably know it from doing podcasts. But we are about ready to do that right now.
General, I wonder if you'll opine with us for a minute here. Maybe this is too philosophical for the podcast. I don't know. I don't know if you'll have like a great answer for it, but we'll try anyway. I want to ask. I've heard stories of junior enlisted service members being on food stamps. And in the conversation today, most of the beneficiaries of your work is, typically folks that are earlier in their careers, they're junior enlisted potentially, and there's some unexpected emergency cost that comes up. I'm wondering, how do we get about solving the root of this problem? What do we need to do as a society in order to be able to ensure that the folks that are raising their right hand to serve our beloved country are taken care of from a financial perspective? What are some of the issues that you see, and are there any proposed solutions?
I think every congressman probably wants to take a shot at that one, but may not have a solution. I will start, and if Jillian needs to correct me, I'm sure she will. But to really correct, I mean, I will just start back. And when I was assigned to Paris Island as a young captain in the late 80s, one of the things I had to do was go over to the commissary. I was the audit verification officer as a collateral duty to go basically verify the commissary's funds. One of the things I had to do was I was introduced to WIC and food stamps. Nobody knew what they were for years once, until recently, when all of a sudden they're coming back. But the bottom line is, as you both know, the troops don't make a lot of money. E1s, D4s, actually E1s, D5s, they don't make, I don't think they make, I can say that now. I don't think they make enough money, especially if they have family members. And then when they're challenged with housing, I mean, they can't get housing on base right away, so they have to move off the base. Like let's say Jacksonville, Florida, where we have them at the air station, and they live 40 miles away. They get a car. They have to rent a house that costs more than their BAH provides. I mean, it's
brutal.
That is not going to change unless you have some serious advocacy groups that basically go to Congress, go to the White House. You actually have those today. They are trying to make some progress. I think one of them is called the White Oak Collaborative. It works with the White House and others. But these are advocacy nonprofits that are basically saying you got to take care of the troops better because of what you just said. But all these stories out there about how it's challenging, and basically Ruark's view is that all these major military installations around the globe that used to be remote. Think about Beaufort, Paris Island area. That's always been remote, especially when I was there. It's not now. Think about all the major bases. San Diego, Camp Pendleton, which was a 40-mile march from San Diego north by Joseph Pendleton, and where they took over 130,000 acres of a ranch. We were all remote in a lot of Army bases, remote. Nowadays, you have people like me that are retired, having a second income around the same areas, defense companies that build up, the whole areas have been built up. Now they're metropolitan areas. That's Ruark's opinion. And so the cost of living is crazy. And so one of the things I really like seeing, but I was wondering, how are we going to afford this, was a proposal this year to Congress for a 15%. Remember that? For 15% pay raise for, I think it was E1s to E4s, or E1s to even 5s even. That isn't even that wouldn't solve, but it'll take a great step to do it. But you're going to have to take a big chunk out of the defense budget to do it. It's going to cost you probably some machinery and hardware. But the bottom line is, I am, if you're really serious about addressing this, and if you can put the relief societies out of business, that's a good thing.
Yeah, totally.
Because then you're paying them enough. But until something like that happens, it's going to be a real challenge. It's a great question. But I really think that you got to do pay raises, incentives, and you got to fix this housing issue. And I don't know, I wish I knew the solution. They tried to come up with a lot of solutions. You remember the PPV, the public-private venture housing?
Sure.
The Navy has tried some really interesting initiatives as well for off-base housing that they charge, that you can afford with your BAH. But even then, there's not enough housing to take care of it. And some of the challenges we have is when these ships the ships have to go to the shipyards. This is something I didn't know. I thought the sailors worked hard at sea when I was because I was on 6 deployments, and I saw them standing watches, mid watches, all this, and we're sleeping in our racks at night in the Marine. The Marines safe unless we're ashore or something like that. Those sailors, when they come back and those ships go into yards, that's when the real work begins. A lot of times, like go to the Northwest up there now around Everett, Whidbey Island, Bangor, Bremerton, and the sailors coming off an aircraft carrier. A lot of them go onto a barge. Get this, a barge. And I'm not saying this; it's a nice barge, but it's livable. But they live on the barge and they work on the ship. Sometimes it's a long. It could be like in Norfolk, where it could be 40, 50 miles. It could be in Gulfport, Mississippi, where it's 40 or 50 miles from where your home is or your family is. The challenges they go through are incredible, and they still stay in, and they still support the nation, and they do this. And that's the kind of folks that we want to take care of. And when they come in, we give them a cup of coffee, they sit down, they talk, they may go to our thrift shops where they can save a bundle of money, we give them a loan, financial assistance. There's a number of things we can do to help them out. But I don't think we're ever going to be out of business unless something changes with how we compensate and house our sailors and Marines and their families. I'm sorry about the long answer, but that's
Nah,
Great.
the more you talk and the less we talk, the better for everybody. I promise. That joke is not funny, but Beau, I do appreciate the polite chuckle. Yeah, I mean, as we record this, it's election day today, and so hopefully if you're listening to this and you're a U.S. congressman, you're a U.S. senator. I know many of our listeners are in positions of great power. um, or if you're running for vice president, we've got a couple veterans on the ticket today. Can you guys give them a pay raise? Like the enlisted, this should be like broadly bipartisan thing, like maybe one of the few things that all Americans probably would agree with. Hopefully that someone can get that done in the coming years, because it really is, it's just silly. Like it's absurd to think that folks that are putting themselves in harm's way and serving our country and are the true tip of the spear. I don't really lose sleep or shed a ton of tears for officer problems. Not to say that the problems aren't real, but for our enlisted service members, it's like, just, we should be helping them to the maximum extent possible. So we're grateful for the work that you do, General. I want to ask, the role that you're in today, as a leader of a large veteran serving nonprofit, I want to ask a little bit about how your military service influenced or shaped your ability to lead the nonprofit. I'm sure that there are certain aspects of it that were probably very helpful in executing your daily battle rhythm, executing against your mission set. But what are some of those things that military service has been helpful for? And what are some areas that you feel as though it didn't necessarily prepare you as well? I'm thinking potentially about like fundraising. I don't necessarily see a direct applicability or transferability of skill sets, but maybe I'm missing something. So I'm hoping that you'll tell us a little bit about, what did your military experience, how did it benefit you in your current role, and what are some things that you've had to come up the learning curve on?
That was great comments. You absolutely hit the nail on the head, Brendan. There, fundraising is where I went first. Basically I had when I was getting ready to retire, I had this 3-star tell me that basically, hey, you ain't what they're looking for on paying boards, which is what everybody wants to get on a paying board where you only have to meet quarterly and things like that. Yeah. But you do have to do a lot of work to prepare. But they said, you don't have a special skill, you're a logistician. Okay, I got it. You're not brutal. What they're looking for. You're basically, you're not a minority. And they're telling me, you're on your own. And I said, okay, that was great advice. So then what I was doing though was, I didn't realize it, but I was helping myself at the same time. Was one of the things I did when I was stationed in Washington, D.C. was I went to all the nonprofit events that I could. I went to the Marine Corps Museum events. I went to Navy Marine Corps Relief Society balls. I went to Scholarship Foundation events. I went to tons of them that were offered. A lot of them were free. And so, for me, a free dinner and get to meet and talk with people was a lot of fun. I got a call right after I retired, and I went to a Scholarship Foundation event from the 3-star that was the chairman of the board. And basically that's how I got recruited to come in and be at the society. I should say, be at the Scholarship Foundation. So did I know anything about fundraising? No. So they gave me a tutor for about a week and tried to teach me about fundraising. I did 7 events then in 3 months. And my predecessor was a prolific fundraiser. She had done that her entire career. And here I come in and I've got no experience. I don't know how the structure of a meeting goes, how you set it up, how you ask for money, how you research somebody's wealth, how you look into a database, what a development team should look like as far as different types of capabilities. And there's a lot of them. If you're seasoned and you're really successful at it. So that was a 4 years of learning, and I can tell you, I certainly made mistakes, but I learned a lot from it. But the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation was a very serious and very effective fundraising organization, and I learned a tremendous amount from them. And after 4 years of being on the road, and it's one of those where it's event based. I did about 25 to 30 events a year, 12 of which were, I'd say, major sit down dinners and briefs and discussions. And I got to meet some of the most wonderful people in the world that just happened to have a lot of net worth, and they and they really helped people that I never thought I would meet and be in the room with. But after 3 or 4 years, you can get used to it. To me, it was just a great experience. But after 4 years of being on the road and my contract ran out, I said, I'm done. I'm taking a year off. So I did. I worked on a farm for a year. And then this Navy Marine Corps Relief Society came up, and I started looking at, now this time I'm smarter. I know exactly what I'm looking for. And so if I would have advice to the military veteran, I would say, number one, make sure you feel a strong connection to the organization that you're applying for. Don't take the first thing that comes in if you don't have a strong connection to it. That's one thing that I think, whether it could be education, it could be taking care of the troops, the junior ones that don't make a lot of money for me, but it could be any number of things. And I would leverage your expertise. Hopefully, you could leverage what you learn in the military in that organization to help you. And I would, and the biggest thing is, to be honest with you, maybe it's because of my age, it's, I don't have a lot of working life left. I think maybe, maybe 10, 15 years. I don't know. But
you're about to hit your prime, General.
But yes, study the climate of the organization. Learn as much as you can. What's the climate like? Because guess what? You can change the climate as an officer in the military, along with your staff NCOs, pretty easy. The command climate, those kind of things. Try changing it in a nonprofit. Just try, and then see how long it takes. So bottom line is, when I came into this organization, here's what I did. I went to the international conference, where we bring all our reps in from our directors from the 52 locations around the world once every 3 years. And I attended it before I was actually hired. And I basically said, I'm going to go around, I'm going to talk to the people in the, with the, I guess, most junior jobs, I would say. And I'm going to see if they're good people. And if they're not good people and they don't treat each other right, I ain't coming. And because I don't need this at my age. So that's what I did. And what I learned was, these people really look out for each other. They take care of each other. They treat each other well. And if you treat each other well, you're going to treat your clients well, where there's sailors and Marines in need and those things. And I found out it was throughout the organization. And that's all I needed to know. And so I signed up and I joined, and it's very true. But that's the biggest, I think a lot of times you're looking for a climate that, to me, it's how you treat each other and you help each other and those kind of things. It's the basic things you learn as a Marine and a sailor. And so, bottom line is, if you join an organization and the climate's not good, it's too late. You're going to have to really think about it. But the bottom line is, I think that for me was very important, and also that you can leverage a lot of that leadership and talent and skills that you learned that you had on active duty. And so that's the best thing I can recommend right now.
I love your comment about culture, sir, because I think that is of an organization. Obviously, having spent 7 years at Amazon, it has a very unique culture. And I saw veterans that came over there thinking, well, I was effective in the Marine Corps and I'm going to lead the same way at Amazon, right? Knife hand or whatever. And you can't. It's a different culture there. And you have to, and I tell people all the time, you have to adapt to the culture of that organization. It's not going to adapt to you. If you think you're coming in there, people are going to say, oh, he's a Marine. Everybody's going to follow me and we're going to be great. That's not going to happen. So when you're in that job search, that transition process, spending the time to understand the culture of a nonprofit, of an Amazon, of a Wells Fargo, of a JP Morgan, of you name the company, everyone is different and unique. And I often tell veterans, the job itself, you can probably do at a lot of different places, but your success is going to be predicated on you fitting into that culture and buying into that mission and you adapting to it, not it adapting to you. You have to adapt to that culture because it's not going to change. And it's just, I think it's a great point that a lot of people don't think about when they're making that transition.
Well said. Well said. That Amazon culture is definitely unique from everybody I talk to. So you obviously understood that very well.
Thanks, sir. No, it's a good run, but I'm enjoying the other side now too.
And hopefully enjoying the culture at TMB, but
100%
to it on the air, I guess.
No, it's great.
When I transitioned out of our beloved Corps, I had been in the uniform for 6 years. I'd gone to the academy before that, so we're in a different kind of uniform. But I was inculcated, and it was everything I knew from my adult life. Both of you gentlemen got out after 25 years and 36 years, respectively, for Beau and for General Ruark. I want to ask about how difficult the mental shift from being in uniform to retiring was. I'm wondering if you guys will share a little bit about just what that transition was like. You've talked, Beau, you've talked a little bit about making sure that you can adapt to a corporate culture, but I'm thinking on the personal front, how difficult was it to hang up the uniform after so long in the gun club. Maybe General Ruark, we could start with you, and then Beau, if you wanted to add some additional thoughts on just what maybe some best practices that you found for making that mental shift out of the uniform for folks that have been serving for a full career.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I think it's a great question, because you'll probably get an assortment of answers on that, depending on the folks you're talking to and things like that. Hanging up the uniform was really easy for me after 36 years. I had a nice transition. I went from the Joint Staff, and then I went to Personnel and Readiness, which was a lot of policy issues, working with civilians in the Pentagon. And so that introduced me to a lot of issues that some of them I liked, some of them I couldn't believe were coming down range, but it taught me a lot about flexibility. And one thing as a Marine, I'm sure Marines are often accused of, is that you're very Marine centric, military centric. You have a very closed mind. You're very conservative on this, and it's super loyal. All those great things about Marines, which we take enormous pride in, and doing a mission perfectly as well as we can, and having good leadership up and down the chain of command. It's a total shift, obviously, when you go to a nonprofit, or it could be anywhere in the business world. And so I think trying to figure out what's important to you, if you can write down some of those things in a transition seminar and things like that, what are the values that you consider most important in a company that you work for? Is it is it the leadership principles? Is it the mission? Is it the vision? It is the guiding principles. Those are three things that we've had to redo here. We kind of update them, I would say. I don't say redo, but we just kind of update them. Are these what we want to do? And then where are we headed? So the thing that really helped me is when I joined the Scholarship Foundation, my retired 3-star general, who was the head of Marine Corps Aviation, looked at me as the chairman of the board, and he said, "Bob, you're going to write a strategic plan." I said, "Roger that, sir." And of course, now I didn't have to salute or anything like that, but that was task number one. And then after that, it was write a campaign plan. And so campaign plan is a fundraising plan to meet the objectives of the strategic plan. So you have to raise a certain number of money to award these many scholarships, which is what for me, and those kind of things, and all the streams of revenue that you're going to build out to do that, and how you're going to do the development piece as well in the campaign plan. It's really tough, but it brings the team together. And so you probably need to have an idea of what you want to do, and what sort of structure is in that organization. Do they know where they're going? Do they have a vision? Do they have guiding principles? And then how do they treat each other? The first thing I did when I got here, to be honest with you, because there were some things that I learned at the Scholarship Foundation, which was a very good organization, was the first thing we're going to do, and I didn't do this until the end of the Scholarship Foundation tour after 3 or 4 years, was I want to know what our core values are. I want to know how we treat each other, because whatever I saw at the international conference is really good. So they came up with, they said, "We're not going to do core values, General. We're going to do care values." And I said, "Okay, I don't know what you're talking about." Well, compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence. It's perfect. And it was a masterpiece, and I had nothing to do with it. That's why that was probably why it was so good, because everybody in the organization from all, we had reps from East, West, Westpac, Europe, in this group that worked at our offices there. They helped put this together. So I think if it starts with your core values, I think what's important, you have to know what's important to you. For me, it was core values. I don't care how much money I make. I didn't care what the job was. I just want to make sure we're treated well. And, up and down, as far as, and have to flow through the board all the way down to the staff, all the way down to the folks that are in the field at the 52 director offices. So I think that hanging up the uniform, there's still things that you can take away. There needs to be a structure. There needs to be a mission, a vision, guiding principles, strategic plan, campaign plan. And every organization needs a strategic plan and a campaign plan. Everyone does. And then, how you treat each other. But those are the things that I think I've really learned and that are ingrained in me. And by the way, you have to be flexible. So when I got to this organization, I couldn't say, I tried to write a strategic plan, campaign plan. Well, it just takes a while. You got to go through a long process, care values, mission, vision, guiding principles, and then move on to it. And some of the things you can't move as fast. So it's just, knowing you're on the right track and you never lose sight of where you're going.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, and I don't, and I'm going to probably say this more broadly than just for myself, but I think you can't be afraid when you're transitioning out to ask for help. That's what I see a lot of times from so many veterans is we get so used to being able to do everything ourselves when we're wearing the uniform. We know how to get things done, whatever you need, orders, you need this, you need that, you go a guy, you can call the gunny, you can get the sergeant major will get it for you, whatever. And all of a sudden you're leaving and you're kind of on your own and you're like, well, I don't want to bother somebody. I don't want to, like you have to get over that mindset that that when you're asking or reaching out to people and networking, it's okay. Like that's what you have to do. So you have to get out of your comfort zone, of the military comfort zone. I've made this analogy before. It's like the Shawshank Redemption, right? You know who you are on the inside of the military. You know how to function. And all of a sudden, when that goes away, you can be lost. So you have to ask for help to be successful. And if you don't, you're not going to be successful in that transition. But if you do, you can actually get overwhelmed with help. So just don't be afraid to ask, and make sure you're asking the right questions. I think that's what General Rourke said is, make sure you do kind of have a plan of where it could be just kind of a mission guidance of, I know I kind of want to get there. I'm not sure how I'm quite going to get there, but have a plan, talk to people, and don't be afraid to ask, because people will help you, but they're not going to come to you. You have to go to them. And that's just it can be a mindset shift as you're making the transition process from the military to the civilian side of the house.
One other thing I would add is that we did something here recently that really impressed me. I'd never heard of it before. We did a client survey. So we basically, at our 52 offices, we put out evaluation forms of our services that we provided, our loans, our grants, our budget for baby classes, our thrift shops, visiting nurse program, to our clients. And it was done randomly. And when it was tallied up by an organization, we had a 94% rating. And that's world class was considered 80%. This is 94. And that it just confirmed really to me what I thought about the organization. I'm in the right organization. Okay, we aren't perfect. We do probably improve a couple things here and there, but the way we treat our clients and the way we treat ourselves, the same way, was really in a good place. And that's why I really do love this organization. But it's not that way everywhere. And it's sometimes people are sent in to fix organizations, and that is, you don't want to do that for your entire career. Trust me. It is very difficult. It takes years a lot of times. Here, I was just very, very happy that I walked into an organization doing that well. So
it's amazing. We've already given quite a bit of advice for transitioning veterans, so I just want to bring things home. General Ruark, I want to say a sincere thank you for the work that you guys are doing, first and foremost. I'm personally grateful as a former Marine. I'm grateful as an American citizen that you're taking care of our fellow devil dogs that are still in uniform, and sailors, of course. Important contingent of the Navy Marine Corps team. Wouldn't be much of a team without the other half of the team. And I want to ask you, where can people learn more about your organization and support the important work that you guys are doing?
We would invite you to go to our website at NMCRS, as in Navy Marine Corps Relief Society.org, and you can learn everything there. And you can learn how to contact us, what we're doing, learn about our multiple programs to help people, and how often we do that. And you can also get on our mailing list, and we also have a social media account on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are great ways to start. And of course, you can go to any of our offices at the 52 locations at the major bases, and just walk into the office and learn about us. It's we'd love to get the word out. And that's one of the things that we're working on is, like I said, with the marketing piece, we've relied on such great support from sailors and Marines for many, many years. And now it's one of these organizations that is so popular and so in demand for support that we're having to appeal to folks outside the wire of bases and stations.
For sure. Okay, so check them out, nmcrs.org. Follow them on social media. General Ruark, thank you so much for joining us today. We will also be kicking you a donation from our company probably in Q1. And then we've got some other exciting ways that we're going to collaborate on going forward. There's more to follow on that front. General Ruark is also going to be joining us at an upcoming happy hour. if you're a fan of the show, you will love our in-person happy hours. We've got one coming up in New York City tomorrow. So by the time you're listening to this, that will have been long in the past. We've got one in Washington, D.C. on November 21st, where General Ruark will be joining us. We've got upcoming events across the East Coast. We've got some in the West Coast. We're going out west for ski season. So you can find out more about those upcoming events at themilvet.org/events. But I want to also thank my co-host, Beau. Beau, it's a lot of fun hosting with you. Fired up to have you on the team, brother. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll catch you guys here next week.